Chapter 260. There were still 15 minutes before the train would stop at the station, so the sudden deceleration naturally attracted the attention of the robbers. In addition, as Principal Chen had said, there was someone working with them, so the robbers knew that the police had arrived. After the gang leader shouted, "Call the F***King police," he fiercely picked up the metal pipe in his hand and swung it directly at Principal Chen's head. Mother F***Ker, purposely stalling for time. You're courting death. The robbers were all arrogant people. Seeing this, they all picked up the metal pipes in their hands and swarmed forward. They all wanted to beat up the old man and the young girl who dared to trick them before they left. The silver wire in her hand was waiting for Yi Qian to throw it out. One end of the silver wire was like a snake as it tied tightly to the metal pipe in the gang leader's hand. With another tug, the metal pipe flew out of the gang leader's hand and landed in Yi Qian's hand in the blink of an eye. "Principal Chen, this is for you. See if it's convenient for you." Everyone was squeezed to the back, and the front was a mess. How could Yi Jifan have the chance to care about her? The king was already in front of him, so he naturally had to capture her. Her move really scared the gang leader. He stared at his hand that was still holding the metal pipe, then looked at Yi Qian. The muscles on his face twitched. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. No wonder you dared to ruin my plans after eating a bear's heart. You actually have some skills. Brothers, whoever kills this old man and the young girl today will have all the money stolen from just now. Although the gang leader was angry, he was still quite smart. He knew that killing people was against the law, so he didn't do it himself. Instead, he instigated his subordinates to do it. Under the stimulation of money, these daydreaming robbers who were only in their 20s suddenly became excited. They raised the metal pipes in their hands and swung them at Yi Qian and Principal Chen. The passengers in the back were tense. When they saw the robbers swinging the iron pipe at the old man and the young man, who were obviously trying to save the passengers, the young man in the upper bunk of Yi Qian shouted, "You bastards will burn to death." As he roared, he poured the entire pot of hot water on the robbers. He started it, and all the male passengers who had hot water bottles in their hands did the same. They all splashed the hot water on the robbers. It was late at night, and the robbers were all wearing thin clothes. When the scalding hot water splashed over, their screams were even louder and more miserable than the screams of the passengers. They were all screaming because they were scalded. Women and men moved to the back. Quick! Joining the melee, the brave male passengers protected the old and young, and the women ran to the back. There were also timid men who ran after them. When they reached the corridor connecting the number 9 and number 10 cars, they found that the door was locked by a hexagonal lock. One by one, they slammed on the door. More than 10 people rushed over. The robbers who were originally guarding the door were so scared that they immediately threw away their metal pipes. They had no choice but to pretend to be passengers and squeeze in the middle. It was 3 in the morning, and the sleeping passengers in the number 10 car didn't move at all. Even when the passengers in the number 9 car banged on the door, they didn't wake up. The door to the number 9 car wasn't the only one that was locked. The door from the number 10 car to the number 9 car was also locked. Naturally, someone did it on purpose to not disturb the passengers in the number 10 car. It was unknown which passenger was agile, but after climbing onto the luggage rack, he pushed all the luggage onto the aisle. In the face of danger, a person's strength was limitless, and so was their wisdom. Using this method could be considered a way to prevent robbers from harming the old and young. Chapter 261. Some people threw their luggage, while others began to throw the sheets and blankets on their beds. This way, the robbers with metal pipes had no choice but to retreat. My bag, how be our bag?" In the chaos, a woman's scream was always the most penetrating, comparable to the sound of a war drum. But no one cared, and it seemed like no one heard her. Even if they did, who cared about bags at this time? Beating the robbers away and letting the police take them away was the most important thing. Yi Ying, who was closest to the middle-aged woman, had been stepped on countless times and elbowed her in the chest countless times. She couldn't help but yell back, "You're still worrying about your bag? Is there something wrong with your brain?" A thin blanket suddenly covered her head. She, who was plunged into darkness, subconsciously tried to pull the blanket away. Suddenly, something hit the blanket heavily and repeatedly. A robber climbed onto the luggage rack and started beating people up. Yi Ying, who guessed it, didn't dare to pull the blanket away. She didn't know who had kindly covered her with the blanket, but she grabbed it tightly with both hands and kept squeezing her whole body back. The middle-aged woman who had called out, "My bag," was also under the blanket. When she realized that there was someone on the luggage rack, she instinctively reached out to grab the blanket to protect herself. Who knew that Yi Ying, who was struggling to breathe, would grit her teeth when she realized that she wasn't as strong as the middle-aged woman. She grabbed the blanket with one hand and used the other to push the unsteady middle-aged woman forward. The middle-aged woman, who wasn't on guard against her back, fell forward under Yi Ying's force. When the robber who climbed onto the luggage rack saw this, he raised his metal pipe and swung it fiercely. The middle-aged woman screamed, and Yi Ying's heart skipped a beat. Yi Qian and Principal Chen fought against the robbers and tried their best to protect the passengers. Yi Ying, on the other hand, was thinking of ways to save her own life and let others suffer. "Boss, let's go. It'll be too late if we don't leave now. The train is about to stop." The train was slowing down. After the robber who was guarding the train opened the door, he shouted at his companions who were fighting in the chaos, "The door is open, let's go." More than 10 robbers faced more than 20 male tourists. The sound of metal pipes, loud roars, and the sound of metal clashing against metal drowned out the sounds of the robbers opening the door. Yi Qian had been staring at the 2 robbers who were guarding the train door for a long time. When he saw that they had opened the door, he kicked them off the train without saying a word. At this speed, they would at most suffer some pain from the fall, but they would not fall to their deaths. Moreover, her focus was not on a few small fries, but on the gang leader who had just arrogantly said that he would do something to her. If she captured the king, she would not be afraid that the police would not be able to catch the small fries. As the train slowed down, the dim street lights on both sides of the railway were no longer flickering. The light that shone into the carriage allowed them to see more clearly, making it easier to fight against the robbers. It also allowed Yi Qian to see the gang leader who instigated the kids to charge forward while he himself retreated, looking for an opportunity to jump out of the car. "Let's get off first. This place is small, so it's not easy to use." After seeing through his intentions, Yi Qian smiled at Principal Chen, who had no problem subduing a few small fries, and said, "It's easier to stretch our muscles when we're outside." If she did not capture the gang leader who said that he would do something to her today, then all her hard work over the past 6 months would have been in vain. Without blocking the escape route of the robbers, Yi Qian pretended to retreat and jumped out of the train with Principal Chen. Then a few other robbers also jumped out of the train and fled. Chapter 262. The robbers who had jumped out of the train shouted as they chased after the train, "Quick, jump out of the train." A few of the robbers who were on top of the luggage racks threw away the metal pipes in their hands and threw them over the heads of the passengers who were huddled together. They cursed, "F***CKU. Then they jumped out of the train and left. Seeing that their accomplices had left one by one, the remaining robbers naturally couldn't stay on the train. They all rushed to the front and jumped out of the train. Outside, it was already raining cats and dogs. After the gang leader got out of the train, he sneered viciously and pointed at the old man and the young man in front of him. "Brothers, what I said on the train just now still counts. Who told their heads to explode? This money," he shook the travel bag that contained at least tens of thousands of yuan. "This money is for whoever it is." After getting out of the train, the gang became even bolder. The train came from behind them and the robbers who were holding the metal pipes fearlessly chased after it. Gunshots were heard. The police in Yu and City realized that something was amiss and fired a warning shot. They quickly rushed over with their men. **CK. When the gang leader saw this, he knew that it was impossible to deal with the old man and the young man in front of him. He shouted, "Go!" and left first. "Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll get my revenge." Since ancient times, robbers have always been afraid of soldiers. When the police arrived and fired their guns, the effect of deterrence was. The robbers who were murderous and wanted to chase after Yi Qian immediately scattered. They crossed the tracks and rushed into the darkness in the rain. Yi Qian's target was only the gang leader. After the gunshots were heard, he said to Principal Chen, "Your shoulder hurts. You can't get in the rain. Get in the train first. I'll be back soon. Girl, be careful. I'll get the police to chase after you." Principal Chen waved his hand and looked kindly at the fearless girl who rushed into the rain in the direction of her target. This girl still had a lot on her mind. When the gang leader said that he wanted to do something to her, he was so murderous that it scared him. She had to vent this murderous aura. She couldn't suppress it in her heart. Since she wanted to chase after him, then go ahead. As for killing someone, she wouldn't do it. When the armed policeman caught up with them, Principal Chen told them the direction in which the gang leader had fled, but he did not mention that Yi Qian had followed him. The train stopped with a long creaking sound. No one dared to move in the number 9 carriage, which was filled with cries. They were afraid that there would be robbers coming out with iron pipes to beat them. No one knew who said, "Let's go." The passengers who were huddled together were so exhausted that they felt like they had lost half their lives. Although they relaxed, they were so scared that they broke out in a cold sweat. None of them dared to move. By the side of the aisle, someone was groaning in pain while lying on the ground. The sound drifted into Yi Ying's ears, causing her body to stiffen. Her face was filled with panic. There was the middle-aged woman who was pushed out by her and spoke with a Yannan accent. There were many injured people on the bus. Some of them were bleeding from their heads. Fortunately, they were still alive and had escaped this disaster. "Money! My husband's life-saving money." Among the passengers, the woman who remembered to give her husband life-saving money ran over while crying. The aisle was filled with luggage. She crawled on all fours to get her money back. She was not the only one who had suffered losses on the bus, but she had lost the most money. Before she could walk out, she was stopped by the police who rushed in and quickly arranged for the police to understand her situation. Chapter 263. Ying sat on the bed, still in a state of shock. She watched the medical staff who came with the police treat the wounds of the injured passengers. The passengers with bleeding heads were carried on stretchers and sent directly to the hospital. The passengers with lighter injuries were checked. After confirming that there were no major problems, the passengers were allowed to continue resting in the carriage. Why don't I see the female student who stood up for everyone just now? Wasn't she on the train just now? Quick, look for her. When the frightened passengers heard that the old man and the young girl who saved everyone were not on the train, some of them surrounded the police to explain the situation. There were also some who looked up and down the train to find them. The middle-aged woman from Yannan City had a bloody wound that was at least 5 centimeters long on her head. When the medical staff stopped her bleeding, she grabbed the hand of a police officer. No matter how painful it was, she had to finish her sentence. "Officer, I was pushed out by a young girl. I want to sue her, I want to sue her. My conscience was bitten by a dog. The other young girl risked her life to save everyone, but this young girl pushed me out in order to divert the attention of the robbers." Although her voice was not loud, King, who had been paying attention, heard everything clearly. Her shoulders trembled slightly. She said to Yifan, who was drinking water, "Dad, I don't feel well. I want to lie down." If she did not want to be discovered, she could not be questioned by the police. She could not speak in front of this middle-aged woman. She had to remain silent. She could only wait until the provincial police got off the train. That would be safe. After such a big incident, the police were very efficient. They arranged for people to guard the train and asked the passengers who were not injured and could pack their luggage to pack their luggage first. Then they asked the injured passengers who needed to go to the hospital to tell them what their luggage looked like and what was inside. The police took care of them and carried them off the train. Principal Chen, who came up with the police, knew that the passengers in the train were looking for him and Yi Qian. He quickly smiled and stopped everyone. "We are fine. The young girl is just a little bold. She was also frightened when she was forced to jump out of the train. She is now resting in the conductor's lounge. Thank you for your concern." Hearing this, the people in the carriage let out a long sigh of relief. The middle-aged woman who was lying on the stretcher and preparing to get off the carriage was also ashamed. "Big brother, You and that little girl. I will never forget you in my life. At the last moment he gritted his teeth and said, and that little girl who caused me to be hit by the metal pipe, just you wait. This was the attitude of someone who swore to pursue the matter to the end. The train did not move, and the passengers squeezed into the hard seats woke up from the heat. When the windows were opened, the wind and rain from outside blew in, bringing with it a chill that made many people fall asleep. No one paid much attention to what was happening in the heavy rain with thunder and lightning. As for why the train stopped, everyone was already used to it. The rain showed no signs of stopping. While the police were dealing with the matter in the 9th carriage, the police arrested several robbers in the rain and escorted them into the police car. The gang leader who was stopped by Yiqian was no longer as arrogant as before. His wrists were tied tightly by something that he could not pull off no matter how hard he tried. The high school student who stood in the dark like a ghost did not make a sound from the beginning to the end. He just chose to hit different places. Chest, lower abdomen, knees. He hit wherever it hurt the most. He hit him until he was afraid. Chapter 264. Big bro, you're looking for Lele? Aren't I with you right now? Why don't I see Lele? The silver wire in his hand was like a part of Yi Qian's body. It wrapped around the man's wrist. He raised his heel and kicked the man's chin hard. The force was a little too strong. The kick knocked the gang leader's lower and upper teeth, breaking 2 of his front teeth on the spot. His mouth was filled with the smell of iron. His right arm was tightly bound. Even though his right hand was not bound, his palm was riddled with wounds. The deepest wound was so deep that his flesh could be seen. He had tried to grab the silver wire, but he didn't know that he had used the wrong method. The silver wire had cut into his palm and left a wound. He couldn't help but scream in pain. Yi Qian couldn't hide his viciousness. When he thought about how he died in his previous life, his viciousness was still faintly cold. Her short hair was already wet, and rainwater flowed down her forehead. Her dark eyes that had been washed by the rain looked especially cold and indifferent in the rainy night. Why wouldn't I be happy to play with you? Didn't you say you wanted to play on the train? Her voice was so cold that it was as if it had seeped through a cold lake. Every word was like a blade that cut through the gang leader's ears. Fear rose in his heart at this moment. Yi Jian's hands were tied together, and as Yi Jian leaped behind him, the long silver thread was already wrapped around his neck. Save me. Save me. The silver wire continued to tighten, but his hands were also entangled by it. The more it tightened, the more his hands were pressed against his neck. He didn't dare to use any strength. If he used his hands, the silver wire would dig into his flesh and wrap around his wrist bones. His feet had only taken half a step forward when the back of his knee was ruthlessly kicked. The kick caused him to stagger and fall to the ground on one knee. The gravel below him was so painful that he felt as if his kneecap had been shattered. I'm having fun now. Why are you still shouting for help? Isn't this what you wanted to see? It's just a swap of roles. You're the one being played by me. Isn't the process the same? In that life, if she had the skills she had today, she wouldn't have been humiliated by a villain. Why would he pay with his life in the end? Since she was reborn, she would never allow anyone to humiliate her again. Absolutely not. Her voice brushed past the gang leader's ear. It was cold and as sharp as a blade. The gang leader was so scared that he peed his pants and begged for mercy. I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. I didn't see him tie. I'm sorry. His neck was strangled, his hands were tied, and the pain in his knees was unbearable. Even so, he had to open his mouth and beg for mercy. I won't dare. I won't dare. In the future, I won't do it again. Spare my life. Beg for mercy, I don't dare. Yi Qian, whose eyes were cold and fierce, blinked lightly. His eyes were a little sore, and then warm tears washed down his cheeks along with the rain. It was as if something heavy had been lifted from her shoulders, causing her shoulders to relax completely and her back to straighten completely. A strong flashlight shone over. It was the police who were chasing after the culprit in the rainy night. There were about 5 of them, and they were closing in on them in an outflanking manner. Yi Qian slightly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His pursed lips curved slightly. As the vicious aura around him quietly dissipated, the resentment and hatred in his eyes also disappeared with a smile. Chapter 265. The police's voice, strong footsteps. The flashing lights were frightening in the eyes of the robbers, but it made Yi Qian feel as if his feet, which had been stuck in a quagmire, had finally been pulled out. In her previous life, it wasn't that no one had saved her, but she wasn't that lucky. You're very lucky. If the police had come any later, I don't think you'd have survived. Yi Qian let go of the silver wire and smiled coldly as he retracted the silver wire that could save his life or kill him. As the robber gasped for breath on the ground, Yi Qian picked up the black bag filled with money that had been washed by the rain and walked into the darkness. In this life, the outcome of her previous life would not be the same. In this life, she didn't have to worry about being humiliated to death, and she didn't have to worry about whether or not someone would come to save her when she was in danger. Because she could finally use her own abilities to defeat the person who dared to humiliate her, making him unable to fight back, and she could finally walk out of that shadow, feeling relaxed and satisfied. The train had stopped for nearly 20 minutes and would leave in another 10 minutes. Principal Chen, who had changed his clothes, sat quietly in the conductor's lounge, listening to the cries and laughter of the passengers in carriage number 9. He looked through the window to see if there was a stubborn figure under the streetlights. In the carriage, Yi Zhifan gently patted Yi Ying's back as he answered the police's question. It was too chaotic. My daughter and I were squeezed in the back, so we had no idea what was happening in front. Officer, my daughter has a heart condition. We're going to the provincial capital to see her doctor. She was just frightened and finally fell asleep. You can ask me if you have any questions. She's just a student. She was scared out of her wits and only knew how to cry. How could she know anything else? He also took out the medical record. It was the City People's Hospital's diagnosis. Yi Ying's name and symptoms were clearly written on it. The police flipped through the medical record and returned it, then asked if he wanted the medical staff to examine it. Yi Zhifan declined, saying that it was inconvenient for him to sleep. After the police left, Yi Zhifan frowned and said coldly, Ying, you always do stupid things at inappropriate times. You think it's flawless, but it's actually full of loopholes. Ying, who was lying on her side and pretending to be asleep, clenched her fists tightly under her thin back. She did not answer and only kept her eyes open. The fear in her eyes slowly disappeared after the police left. I'll go check on Yi Qian. She hasn't shown up yet. Yi Zhifan knew that his daughter was definitely listening, but she had always been arrogant and thought too highly of herself. Just based on this, she was inferior to Yi Qian. Just as the woman from Yannan City had said, even he had to admire Yi Qian's bold behavior. In that case, what gave her the confidence to be so daring? Not bad at all? Support from the army? Principal Chen's arrangement? He needed to personally verify and inquire about it. When he walked to the conductor's lounge, he saw that the curtain was drawn, blocking the glass so that he couldn't see inside. He placed his hand on the door lock and pressed it lightly. It was locked and couldn't be opened. He knocked on the door. Open the door, Miss Jian. Let Uncle see how you are. There was no response from inside, but Principal Chen peeked out from the corner of the corridor. She just took a packet of calming powder from the medical staff and drank it. She's probably asleep now. Beside him was a police officer who was taking down his statement. Chapter 266. She's asleep? Is she hurt anywhere? I'll be worried if I don't go in and take a look. Yi Zhifan glanced at the policeman who hadn't gotten out of the car. His eyes flickered. Ying was scared too. Both of them suffered tonight. Principal Chen smiled. He took out a hexagonal lock and opened the door. This child was even more scared than Ying. Luckily, the robber opened the car door himself so that both of us could jump out easily. Although she was scared, her courage was commendable. It's worth learning from. She was curled up on the narrow bed. Her clothes were clean, but her hair was still wet. Her back was to him, so he couldn't see her expression. Let her sleep here. Principal Chen didn't let Yi Zhifan continue to observe her. He gently closed the door and locked it with a hexagonal lock. She's still scared. She asked me to lock the door. May I, don't mind. The little girl came back just in time. She really knew that Yi Jifan would come to see her. It seemed that he didn't have to worry about the little girl being taken advantage of by Yi Jifan in the future. Yi Jifan took a step forward and saw that the policeman who was taking notes was holding a black bag. It was still dripping with water. He glanced at the water stains on the floor and narrowed his eyes. There's some life-saving money in this bag. Police comrade, since you've picked it up, can you take out the life-saving money first? Headmaster Chen said in a low voice. He glanced at Yi Jifan, who had a complicated look in his eyes and seemed to be thinking about something. He let out a long sigh. The money to save a life at the hospital. Yi Jifan looked at the bag in the policeman's hand again. He asked Principal Chen, "What's wrong? Can't you take out the money and return it to the passengers?" You're sure that the robber carried this bag with him when he got out of the car? It contains the money from the passengers on the car, right? The one taking the statement was a policeman in his 40s. We still need to find a few witnesses. Then, the money will be returned to the passengers. Principal Chen took a step back with a smile and said, I can confirm that this bag was indeed carried by the robber. It also contains some of the passengers' money. As for proof, this Mr. Yi can do it too. Yes, I can prove it. Yi Jifan nodded. He could indeed prove this because there was his money in the bag. You can open the bag and take a look. There's an envelope inside. There's 1,000 yuan in the envelope. This is the cash that the robbers took from me. There was indeed one in the bag. The policeman looked at it and closed it again. He said to Yifan, Okay, come with me. It turned out that the bag was picked up by the police during the chase, and it wasn't stolen by Headmaster Chin or Miss Jian. After understanding the situation, Yi Jifan felt relieved. The train stopped for a full half an hour before it started moving again. Listening to the rumbling sound of the flute, Yi Qian, with his eyes closed, gently stroked the silver wire around his wrist. The corners of his mouth were gently curled up until the morning of the next day. The only person who could save himself would never be someone else. In the end, he could only rely on himself. In the provincial capital's Great Hall of the People, Yi Qian and Wang Yimou received the award personally presented by the governor. They said a few words of thanks and promised to continue working hard. After the speech, she finally let out a sigh of relief. To be honest, she wasn't used to this kind of scene. Chapter 267. When it was time to take a group photo with the students who had been selected as Outstanding Communist Youth League member, Yi Jian's eyes inadvertently glanced down the stage and saw an acquaintance that she was not very familiar with. At this moment, his iconic peach blossom eyes were winking and smiling at her. Han Zheng, why is he here? Could it be that Major Xia is here too? He subconsciously looked around but didn't see any familiar faces. The photographer had already asked all the students to look at the camera and maintain a smile. After the flash, the smile was frozen. Han Zheng put down his camera and hummed a little tune. This little girl even dared to stand Major Xia up. This courage, tsk, he really admired her. After the photo was developed, should he send it to Major Xia who was far away in the snowy highlands? Could it be that he could use the photo as a bargaining chip or something? You're not serious, shut up. Sitting next to Han Zheng, a dignified middle-aged man looked straight ahead and scolded softly, I'll arrange for someone to send you away immediately later. Don't follow me all day. Han Zheng snorted softly and said lazily, Brigade Commander Han, if you agree to let me go now, I'll leave immediately and won't be in your sight for a few years. If you don't agree, I'm sorry, but I still have to follow you. Commander-in-Chief Xia is much more open-minded than you. He knows that soldiers have to be tortured. You should learn from him. If your son is successful, you'll be proud of him as a father. Brigade Commander Han's biggest headache was his only son. He didn't know how many other skills he had, but when it came to tormenting people, no one could beat him. He followed him from the north to the south, and he still had to go to Fujian town. Was this kid going to follow him? Who didn't want their son to be successful? He had to have the ability to do so. Commander-in-Chief Xia's son was taught by Master Xia and was extremely outstanding in all aspects. Last year, he graduated from military school and was sent to the army because of the all-round competition. He won the all-round king of the Southern Province military region in one fell swoop. With this ability, Commander-in-Chief Xia would naturally send his son to the front line without worry. Dad, you don't really look down on me and think that your son is inferior to others, right? Let me tell you, I, Han Zheng, am also a man of indomitable spirit. Back then, you kicked me to military school. Now that I'm finally going to move up, are you going to stop me and make me useless? The transfer order has already been issued. What's the point of holding on to it? Military orders, Brigade Commander Han Zheng. How could Han Zheng not know what his father was worried about? His father was just afraid that he would accidentally die at the front line. After all the students had left the stage, Brigade Commander Han sighed and said, "Let me think about it." Then he asked, "Why did you keep taking pictures of the girl in the middle? Do you know her?" "Yes, she's a good girl. Master Xia admires her a lot." Han Zheng lowered his head and looked at the camera. There were still 10 rolls of film left. He would go out and take a few solo photos of her later. "Dad, you have 3 days to consider. I'll leave later so as not to bother you." Yi Qian came down from the stage after taking the photo. He glanced at Han Zheng a few times and only looked away after confirming that Xia Jinyuan was not there. When he came down, there were still camera flashes. No matter how bored Yi Qian and Wang Mo were, they still had to smile until the end of the meeting. Chapter 268. The 3-hour meeting lasted from 9 in the morning to 12 in the afternoon. Yi Qian, who had been smiling the entire time, felt his cheeks stiffen. The end of the meeting didn't mean that he could leave. He chatted with Principal Chen and several leaders of the city's education bureau as they walked towards the provincial government cafeteria. Secretary Wu had already started asking where Yi Qian was going to attend the high school entrance exam. He also introduced number 1 middle school. Although the environment isn't as good as the provincial number 1 middle school, our number 1 middle school is the first school to introduce the internet to our students. Moreover, along the way, Secretary Wu wasn't the only one who mentioned number 1 middle school. The other leaders also did the same. It was clear that they all wanted Yi Qian to stay in the city and not be recruited by the provincial government. Principal Chao of the provincial government cafeteria finally finished his small talk with the leaders. When he walked over, he heard Yi Qian, who the school wanted to recruit, say with a smile, "Actually, I didn't consider going to the provincial government to study. Firstly, it's too far away. Secondly, it's not necessary. You ultimately have to rely on yourself to study. Whether you can get into your ideal university is also dependent on yourself. I don't want to go to a school that's too far away. I'll just study in the city." Principal Chao, who had wanted to say a few more words, sighed softly and said to Teacher Zhu, "She can even give up the opportunity to study in the capital. If she gives up the opportunity to study in the provincial government. Sai, let's go. This girl is a piece of gold. She will shine no matter where she goes." Not going to the capital or the provincial government. To make it easier for him to go home, Yi Qian chose to study in the city. When they were about to reach the cafeteria, Yi Qian saw Han Zheng standing under the shade of a tree with a camera around his neck. He had one hand casually in his pocket, as if he was waiting for someone. Who was he waiting for? Yi Qian couldn't help but look behind him. But there was still no sight of that towering figure behind him. He wasn't waiting for Major Xia. Han Zheng couldn't help but chuckle as he walked over. Did this girl think that he came with Major Xia? As soon as he moved, Yi Qian immediately whispered a few words to Principal Chen and rushed forward to greet him. Han Zheng had no choice but to stop himself from asking Principal Chen about her daily life. He stood under the sun and waited for her to walk over. She was a very vigilant girl who didn't like people getting close to her. From a psychological point of view, this was also a sign of insecurity. That's right. She had no parents, and she was cheated by her uncle's family. It was already very healthy that she didn't develop any world-weary emotions. "Last time, young Master Xia asked you to look for me, but you didn't come. As for me, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to see if classmate Yi Qian, who dared to stand young Master Xia up, has any words that he needs me to pass to young Master Xia. So he was here because of what happened last time. Yi Qian smiled and said, "Are you going there too?" The provincial government building occupied a large area. Han Zheng didn't lead Yi Qian to the cafeteria. Instead, he brought her to a military car. "I don't know yet, but it shouldn't be a problem. Let's go outside and chat while we eat. You can even write a letter for me to pass to him." Yi Qian, who didn't refuse, quietly got into the car. She didn't say much until she got out. As Han Zheng drove, he glanced at the silent girl from the corner of his eye. She was really calm. There was no strange expression on her little face at all. "You didn't go," but he rushed over the moment he got off the plane. "Little girl, who knows how many girls in the capital want to meet young Master Xia, but you actually stood him up. You're making an enemy out of all the girls in the capital." Chapter 269. He even went there on purpose? Yi Qian pursed her lips unnaturally and shifted her body. "I was in a hurry to go back. I didn't have time to wait for 2 more days." Sigh, should she write a letter? What a problem. She would be lying if she said she didn't feel guilty. He even went there on purpose to see her. It was wrong of her to stand him up. The unnatural expression that flashed across her face didn't escape Han Zheng's eyes. He majored in psychology, so he could guess what a person was thinking based on their facial expressions. She was embarrassed when he said it out loud. She felt a little guilty after knowing the truth, but there was no girlish sentiment. Compared to the disappointment on young Master Xia's face when he found out she didn't come, it was the face of a disgruntled husband. Han Zheng wasn't familiar with the provincial capital. After driving for less than 5 kilometers, he saw a decently decorated Cantonese restaurant and drove straight to it. He found a seat near the window and placed his order. Then he placed one hand on the back of the soft seat. His peach blossom eyes, which were usually full of smiles, were now scrutinizing her. He secretly observed the young lady who kept her emotions in check rather quickly. Yi Qian drank her water unhurriedly and generously allowed him to scrutinize her. At first glance, Han Zheng wasn't a very handsome man, but his eyes were bright and gentle. When you stared deeply into the other party's eyes, you could only see his affection and deep doting, as if you were the person he loved the most, the person he placed at the top of his heart. When the expression in his peach blossom eyes became serious and serious, even his gaze became stern. Just sitting there, even if the corners of his mouth were slightly curved, all you could see was the coldness of a soldier. "Classmate Yi Qian, it's obvious now that you don't have any romantic feelings for Major Xia. Of course, you can't be blamed for this. After all, you're still young. But Major Xia's feelings for you? How should I put it? It's not love, but it's already within the range of admiration, so..." Hearing this, Yi Qian naturally interrupted him. Looking at him, she said with a faint smile, "So I need to thank Major Xia for his appreciation of me. At the same time, I need to reciprocate. That's because Major Xia is the dream partner of all the young ladies in the capital, and I'm just a girl from the countryside. I have no background, no talent, and no looks. I should be deeply grateful that he has taken a fancy to me. I have to be tactful and go along with it. Only then will I be worthy of Major Xia's appreciation of me." Yi Qian said everything in one breath without pausing. Looking at his slightly stiff face, Yi Qian gulped and added, "It seems that young Master Han is standing up for a friend and fighting for justice. But does Major Xia know about this?" "Hey!" The little girl was so eloquent. Who said that he was young and didn't understand? How could he not understand after hearing all these sentences? That was indeed what he meant, but it was definitely not as sharp as what she said. Moreover, why did she sound so disdainful? She even had a sense of mockery towards him. It seemed that there was a misunderstanding. If it was someone else who misunderstood, it would have been fine, but not Yi Qian. Han Zheng, who rarely explained anything to others, smiled and said, "Little girl, don't be so prickly. For a big family like Family Xia, whether the girl has a background or not is not a problem at all. As for what you said about having no talent and no looks..." Han Zheng winked happily and said with an amused expression, "Your little face is not bad. Your eyes are eyes and your mouth is a mouth. It's just that you haven't developed much yet. Needless to say, how could Major Xia's appreciation be bad?" Chapter 270. When Yi Qian heard him say the same thing, he couldn't help but laugh. No wonder you guys are childhood friends and speak in the same tone. Also, don't praise me too much. I can't take it. What if I fall in love with you? Don't. Even if what I said wasn't nice, that's because you didn't hear what I was going to say next. Now that you've said it, my legs have turned to jelly. Han Zheng raised his eyebrows, but the sternness in his eyes didn't diminish. He said calmly, "I'm childhood friends with young Master Xia. He's humorous and popular with women, but he has a good character. He's not affectionate and doesn't show mercy. In all these years, I've never seen him bring a girl to us. You're the first. Because of this, as a friend, I know that some things aren't nice to hear, but I still have to say them." His expression gradually turned serious, and his eyebrows became sharper. "He does admire you, but if you're not interested in him, you don't have to be in such a hurry to draw the line. From a man's point of view, the more the woman he admires is in such a hurry to draw the line, the more he wants to conquer her, have her, and make her his. Men are natural hunters. Just like animals, they like to conquer. Young lady, if you don't want anything to happen with young Master Xia, I suggest you don't be in such a hurry. You should take it slow. Otherwise, young Master Xia will only become more interested in you, and it'll be harder for you to escape." From a man's point of view, this was indeed the case. And Yi Qian happened to be committing this taboo. Hearing this, the thoughtful Yi Qian waited until the first dish was served before slowly nodding. "Hearing what you said, it makes sense." Yi Jian changed the topic and smiled. "But the way I get along with Major Xia is a little different. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. And I don't know you that well. If there's something you don't understand, I suggest you ask Major Xia yourself. Also, I do need to write an apology letter to him. After all, I was the one who stood him up first." With that said, Yi Qian got up to get a pen and paper from the waiter. When Han Zheng saw her coming over with a pen and paper, he was stunned. Wasn't it a little too casual? Using a menu as a letter, was that okay? Why wouldn't it work? At least Yi Qian was writing seriously. So, 2 months later, Xia Jinyuan, whose eyelashes were stained with snow, received the letter from Han Zheng. When he opened the letter and saw that it was not a piece of paper full of girlish feelings, but a menu from an unknown restaurant, he looked at Han Zheng with his snowy eyes. Under the thick windshield mask, his expression was, "Are you kidding me? I'm not playing with you, and I don't dare to play with you. Look behind you, look behind you." Han Zheng, whose eyes were blurred by the snowy wind, breathed out cold air. He wanted to laugh, but he held back his expression and said, "It's the little girl you admire who picked the materials on the spot." Also, he really wanted to know. The little girl said that the way she interacted with Major Xia was different. Just what kind of difference was it? The snow and wind were so strong that even reading the letter was difficult. Also, the paper was not only of poor quality, it was also as thin as a cicada's wing. He was really worried that the snow and wind would blow the letter until it disappeared. He carefully put the unread letter into his pocket and said to Han Zheng, who had been resting at the military depot for almost 2 months and only came to the training base today, "Let's go back first. The snow leopards will come out later." This was the world of snow leopards. They were extremely rare and no one wanted to see them. Han Zheng's expression turned serious and he immediately followed. Chapter 271. The base was located on a plateau, and in November, the only scenery one could see at the base was snow. Once winter came, the vehicles couldn't even get to the military depot, let alone enter the training base of the Snowfield Brigade. The Chinese government had invested a lot of manpower, material, and military resources to train a special force. For example, the Snowfield Brigade only recruited 2 to 3 soldiers every 3 years. If there were no suitable soldiers, they would rather not recruit than let unqualified soldiers enter the Snowfield Brigade. The Snowfield Brigade was a special force that had no organization, was not affiliated with any military region, and was so mysterious that some military chiefs had no right to ask about it. It could be said that it had outstanding military achievements, and no special force could compare to it. It was true to say that it was obscure, because you couldn't find out what this troop had done or what missions they had completed. Han Zheng was the last soldier to report to the Snowfield Brigade this year, and he was also the one who had been raised. Identity: captain, son of a high official. Here, he was just like Xia Jinyuan. Whatever identity he had before, it was all over again. On the way to the training base, Xia Jinyuan didn't say much, but he emphasized one thing: forget your identity. Although Han Zheng was fully prepared, he was still stunned when he saw the conditions of the training base. Then he patted Xia Jinyuan's shoulder heavily and said with a pained expression, "We are wearing white skin. Will we turn black when we go back? I don't know if the sunscreen will work. I brought sunscreen with me. I don't know if you will turn black, but I know that I won't. As for the sunscreen, it's already negative 20 to 30 degrees. You can take it out now and see if it can be squeezed out." Xia Jinyuan took off his windproof mask and carried the rifle on his shoulder. He smiled at his childhood friend, whose lips had turned white from the cold. "Also, there is no fire here and there is no electricity. There are only candles. There is a hand-crank generator, but it is rarely used unless we need to contact the military depot. As for heating, we basically rely on shaking. Put the supplies in the corner. Remember, don't let any fragrance out because our wooden house is not sturdy. It can't protect against anything except wind and rain. This area is where the snow leopards are active. You have to be careful not to be eaten by them. The map is made of paper, but it is definitely the latest version and is purely manual. Train well. Z7, you have to adapt to the environment here as soon as possible. After 1 year, we will go down the mountain." Han Zheng, codenamed Z7, said with a serious expression, "Don't worry, I won't embarrass the country. Before it gets dark, I will see what she wrote. You can clean yourself. The other team members will be back in about an hour or so. Prepare the food." Xia Jinyuan, who had been here for 4 months, had completely adapted to the environment on the snowy plateau. After melting the snow on his eyes and eyebrows with the warmth of his palms, his jade-like handsome face was still exquisite, but his eyebrows looked more mature and restrained. Although the barracks were made of wood, it was still windproof and snowproof. Xia Jinyuan did not dare to stand in the wind and snow to read the letter. He stood at the back of the wind and carefully took out the thin letter. The first thing he saw was, "Good luck Cantonese restaurant." The little girl really knew how to use local ingredients. Although her thoughts seemed complicated, they were actually simple. However, she treated people with sincerity and did not feign civility. Chapter 272. Xia Jinyuan's gaze landed on the words, "Dear Major Xia," followed by, "Hello." Xia Jinyuan felt his teeth ache. This girl must be doing this on purpose. She even used honorifics. The letter was very simple. It started with an apology, followed by a description of her recent situation. She also mentioned that she would be studying at No. 1 middle school for the next 3 years of high school and had no plans to go to the provincial capital. At the end of the letter, she added, Han Zheng took several photos of her and asked if he could get the photos back. There was really nothing else. How many words could there be in this small menu? Xia Jinyuan smiled and counted all the words seriously. There were 627 words, and he had to add punctuation marks. He thought for a while before coming up with 4 words. 627 words, not bad. However, this girl was really calm. He had already left the words, "Wait for him to come back." So why didn't she react at all? Did she not understand? No, she wouldn't. With this girl's intelligence, she would definitely understand. If she didn't mention it in the letter, it could only mean that she was avoiding it or thought he was joking. If she was avoiding it, he could think of a way to make her face it. If she thought he was joking, that would be troublesome. It was enough to show that she didn't believe what he said at all. He carefully read the letter again and committed the 627 words to memory. Then, he carefully and seriously folded the letter and put it in his pocket, near his heart. It was a pity that they couldn't communicate with the outside world. If possible, he really wanted to reply. Especially when she wrote at the bottom of the letter, "Major Xia, are we pen pals?" It was as if her clear voice was right next to his ear. It reminded him of every second he spent with her. There were still 8 months until the end of the year. By the time he went back, little Fox would be in high school. What a pity! She was still too young and underage. He put the letter away properly and felt his heart warm up. After a while, he turned to ask Han Zheng, who was preparing the bread, did she say anything else besides the letter? Also, how did she send the letter to you? How did she get the address? It's a long story. Brigade Commander Han didn't agree to my transfer order and is still in custody. Military orders are like mountains. How long can he be in custody? As long as I don't give up, he can't do anything. But it's not a good idea to keep holding on to him like this. So, I pestered him every day until I finally reached the southern province. Coincidentally, I saw your little girl in the provincial capital's Great Hall of the People. Han Zheng put away the hard bread and gave each of his comrades a piece of ham sausage. As he worked, he recounted how he met Yi Qian and what he said. That little girl of yours is really something. The moment she opened her mouth, she asked what she should do if she took a fancy to me. That's why I said, that's great, we can still stay together. Under the gaze that was colder than snow, she couldn't finish her sentence. Although Han Zheng didn't continue speaking, his laughter didn't stop. She did say what she wanted to say, but my reaction was, my legs went weak. She really didn't say anything else. It was indeed the little girl's style to not talk to people she was not familiar with. Thinking of this, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, she is not familiar with you, so of course she won't talk to you seriously. The bread has turned to stone. I'll boil some water and cook some dried vegetables. Once winter came, the Snowfield Brigade members in the base ate bread the most. Occasionally, they would light a fire and put the dried vegetables in the water that would never boil. It was a vitamin supplement. Chapter 273. Once winter arrived, the Snowfield Brigade members in the base would eat bread the most. Occasionally, they would light a fire and put dried vegetables and leaves into the water that would never boil as a vitamin supplement. The training process of the Snowfield Brigade was more arduous than any other soldier in the army, but their abilities were not something any soldier in the army could compare to. Han Zheng was a person who could endure hardship. He shared the bread and ham sausages that were only enough to fill his stomach without batting an eyelid. Yes, she's a very vigilant little girl. So, I'm very curious. What did you do to make her smile like the sun when she looked at you? Han Zheng had a good impression of Yi Qian. With his status, he was used to seeing all kinds of people since he was young. He could tell whether they were real or fake at a glance. Take Yi Qian for example. The first impression Han Zheng had of her was that she was open and aboveboard. Yes, she was open and aboveboard. What he saw was not the exquisite beauty of her facial features, but the temperament of her movements. She was demure and graceful, without the weakness of a girl. She had a kind of open and aboveboard, dark and elegant like an orchid character. But she really doesn't have any feelings for you. I told her that you rushed over and didn't see her. But in exchange, you only made her feel guilty. Other than that, there was nothing else. Also, you really have to thank me. If I hadn't hinted to her and used her guilt to write you a letter, brother, it's very likely that you wouldn't even have received this letter. As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan listened quietly. The smile on his thin lips was like the sun on a snowy mountain, bright and dazzling. It's good enough that you can make her feel a little guilty. Take out all the things you didn't take out. The letter here mentioned that you took a photo of her. No way, she told you that? Of course, this is the way I get along with her. You won't understand. Han Zheng snorted and said a little gloomily, I finally became the magpie bridge between the cowherd and the weaver girl, but in the end, I didn't get any benefits at all. She even said that she wanted to use the photo in exchange for a few conditions. Who knew that a letter would sell me out? How exactly do you guys get along? Can you tell me more about it? What kind of way of getting along? From knowing each other, to fighting side by side. They were friends and comrades in arms. If one day they could even become lovers who fought side by side, that would be perfect. A few silhouettes came against the snowy light, all of them bringing with them a chilly wind as they walked into the wooden house. The two people who were talking just now immediately calmed down and stood at attention, welcoming their comrades who had returned from their mission. This time, they were not only training in the snowy highlands, but also carrying out an important mission. The situation is not good. Tomorrow, bring some rations and take a detour. G3 spread out the map. His slender fingers gently traced across the map as he said to Xia Jinyuan, Q King, you're very perceptive. You'll go with J5 tomorrow. As for Z7, you're new here so you're not familiar with the terrain. Stay here and guard it. The company commander at the sentry post contacted me today, hoping that we can support them. You stay here and support the outpost. Q King, J5, and I are going to look for the 3 missing brothers. Han Zheng had no idea that he would encounter a missing brother as soon as he arrived. Listening to the piercing snowy wind, he said in a low voice, Okay, no problem on my side. I'll guard the back. I'll leave the front to you 4 brothers. Also, the military asked me to send a message to your sentry post. Chapter 274. He spoke in a low voice. One could only vaguely make out the words satellite, contact, and other sensitive military secrets. There was no doubt that the message he brought was very exciting news for the Shuiyu Special Forces members who had been here for 4 months. This way, they would be able to contact the military at any time in the future. Next spring, the engineers will come over and finish building the equipment. We should be able to leave the mountain around July. Although Han Zheng didn't participate in the previous missions, he still knew what the Snowfield Brigade was doing. This was definitely good news for the Sentinel Company stationed at high altitudes. G3 put away the map and patted Han Zheng's shoulder. Go to the Sentinel Company tomorrow and tell them the good news. They will arrange the reception for the engineers. We will be responsible for keeping watch in the dark. We leave at 6 tomorrow morning. Go to bed early after eating and save your energy. Z7, there are still a few oxygen tanks. If you feel uncomfortable, call for help. We will take turns keeping watch and will wake you up in the middle. Han Zheng had been at the military station for almost 2 months when the snow had sealed off the mountain. But now, they were at an altitude of more than 5,000 meters. G3 was worried that he would really fall asleep if he closed his eyes because of altitude sickness, so he told him that he would wake him up in the middle of the night. This wasn't an exaggeration. It was a real thing. Dinner was hard bread prepared by Han Zheng, a ham sausage, and a packet of pickled vegetables for each person. As for fresh vegetables, fragrant rice, hot noodles, don't even think about it here. At least the 5 of them still had food to eat. As for the 3 brothers who had lost contact with them, they didn't know where they were hiding in the snow. However, they weren't too worried. This kind of thing happened often. Losing contact for one day was still a short period of time. Later on, they lost contact for 3 days at most. It was under such difficult conditions that, in the spring of the next year, a confidential report from the snowy highlands, translated by Han Zheng alone, was sent back to the military headquarters. At the same time, a military layout map was also sent back to the military headquarters. This was the information that the 8 members of the Snowfield Brigade had exchanged for with their lives. They walked in the snowy mountains, accompanied by snow leopards. There wasn't even a small path. They climbed the steep mountains and the bottomless cliffs. They relied on their hands and legs to complete the mission given to them. By the time the news came back, spring was approaching in the north, and the cherry blossoms in the south had already withered. The days passed very quickly. It seemed that he still hadn't woken up from his spring sleepiness. He didn't know when the chirping of cicadas had started. After the general examination, Yi Qian did not stay at home like the other students to wait for the notice to arrive. Instead, he immediately returned to the village after the examination and joined the army for training the next day. Principal Chen and Uncle Zhen didn't ask about Yi Qian's results, nor did they ask her if she did well in the exams. When she said that she would go to the army immediately, the two elders took her to the army without hesitation. Results and scores had never been the focus of his attention. 1.5 years into the 4-year plan, and Yi Qian's training was getting more and more arduous. Yi Qian was standing alone under the scorching sun with camouflaged branches and leaves covering his head. He had a Barrett M82A1 anti-material sniper rifle propped up. He had already been training for a full 6 hours. Long-range sniping missions often required the sniper to run long distances without eating, drinking, or sleeping. Good hearing and vision were the basics, and at the same time, they also needed to have extremely high endurance. Chapter 275. For example, she wouldn't feel thirsty because of the sun, wouldn't move because of frequent urination, and wouldn't expose herself because of insects. Fragrance came from the bitter cold. Theory learning, shooting training, skill training, and stealth training were carried out at the same time. Yi Qian had already completed shooting at stationary targets in different positions within different shooting ranges. Now, she was entering the dynamic shooting training. The so-called dynamic shooting training was the most difficult training. It required her to shoot at targets that appeared and disappeared at a certain distance within a set period of time. The passing standard was a distance of 400 meters, and the required time was 4 seconds. After 6 hours of hiding, Yi Qian was waiting for a mouse to appear. Finally, when the wind blew, a mouse suddenly appeared in the crosshair scope. In that second, Yi Qian's breathing tightened, and with a bang, she fired her first shot. This was also her first shot in the dynamic shooting training. As the mouse squeaked into the forest, Yi Qian knew she had failed this shot. Her willow leaf-like eyebrows furrowed slightly, and her increasingly beautiful facial features revealed a rare coldness of a girl. Holding a sniper rifle that could destroy a car's engine with a single bullet, and could also quickly penetrate brick walls and cement, she stood there and let herself be criticized. Your body's functions haven't been relaxed, and the preparation before firing was too tense. Also, 6 hours of not moving has already made you feel tired, causing errors in your vision's straight line and visual image, resulting in errors in your judgment of the bullet's trajectory. Principal Chen's voice was as cold as a bullet, without a trace of warmth. His eyes also didn't have the usual kindness. This isn't the original gun, but Yi Qian. You have to get used to any sniper rifle. Let every gun be your old partner, and every bullet in every gun can be close to your breath. Taking the sniper rifle from Yi Qian's hands, Yi Qian aimed at the target, aimed, calculated the wind speed, calculated, and pulled the trigger. Bang! After less than a minute, Yi Qian smelled the faint scent of blood. The mouse that had clearly escaped was finally shot by a sniper rifle. This was the standard of a world-class sniper. He didn't need to prepare for too long. He only needed one target, and he could complete the mission. This was also Yi Qian's goal. To surpass Principal Chen, she had to stand even higher. Yi Qian gasped softly. This was the first time Principal Chen. The first time he personally held a gun in front of her. It was so sudden that she didn't even have time to react before the world-class sniper's demonstration ended. Amazing! Her face was full of admiration, and Principal Chen had a serious expression, so he lightly tapped her head with the butt of his rifle. Little girl, train hard. 2 weeks, Yi Qian. The highlands, mountains, deserts. Mississippi. Mississippi Jian, you have to be prepared. The toughest days, Mississippi. Every place had different environments, training requirements, and shooting conditions. The external environment's temperature, altitude, wind speed, atmospheric visibility, lighting conditions, and other natural conditions would all affect the shooter's aim and the trajectory of the bullet. Principal Chen wanted Yi Qian to be able to hit the target no matter what the environment was. Although the environment could affect the accuracy of the shot, she had to use her excellent skills to eliminate the environmental factors, and she would be able to complete the mission perfectly. Chapter 276. There was only one factor that could not be controlled, and that was luck. This was the only thing that a sniper could not control. But what was luck? Luck was built on your daily training and your sniping skills. So, in Principal Chen's words, if you failed, don't blame it on bad luck. It was because you were not good enough. Bad luck was just an excuse. The next 2 weeks of dynamic training were even more arduous than before. Principal Chen no longer stood beside Yi Qian to guide her on what to do. Instead, he personally took the role of the enemy's sniper and confronted Yi Qian. Later on, Yi Qian recalled the training she had gone through in the past. She felt that this period of training was the most arduous and difficult. That was because she was facing a world-class sniper, not an ordinary sniper. On the first day, Yi Qian could not even find where Principal Chen was in disguise. He was clearly less than 100 meters away from her, but she did not know where Principal Chen was until she was hit by a blank bullet. Natural camouflage and artificial camouflage must be combined perfectly. Spring as the trees, summer as the shrubs, autumn as the dead leaves, and winter as the snow. This is the perfect natural camouflage. Headmaster Chen, who was wearing a camouflage suit, sat cross-legged. The sun was so hot that the skin on his lips peeled off. There was no water to drink and there was no wind. He just sat there and gave advice to Yi Jian. Your sense of smell is very sensitive, so I deliberately rolled in the mud to cover up the smell on my body. This is also a way of disguise. Girl, remember this. Camouflage is a basic skill that a sniper must master. The quality of the camouflage skill determines whether a sniper can successfully complete the mission. This was what Principal Chen had learned from his own personal experience. He was so strict that it was almost harsh when it came to training Yi Qian. Yi Qian entered the true hellish training and approached the level of a world-class sniper. Her perception was extremely good. Even though she was sometimes killed by Principal Chen, she had only been using guns for a little more than a year. She was not like Principal Chen, who was a world-class sniper with decades of experience. 1 month after the summer vacation, Principal Chen left Shuku village with Yi Qian. No one knew where they went, not even Uncle General. The school's acceptance letters began to be sent out. When Yi Qian, Yi Ying, Zhang Wenli, and the other third-year students from the same village received their acceptance letters, there were only 15 days left until the end of the summer vacation. Village Chief Zhang Difu took the 6 notices from the postman, counted them, and said uncertainly, "There are 11 children in the village who are in junior high school. These 6 notices, all of them?" Village Chief, there will be a notice for those who are admitted to high school. Even if there are 20 people in Shuku village who are in junior high school, if only 6 of them are admitted, there will only be 6 notices. The postman laughed. Every year at this time, when the acceptance letters for high school and university were sent out, the villagers would ask about it. Zhang Difu sighed and nodded. Yes. Sigh, only 6 of them are admitted to high school. This year, none of them are admitted to university. Sigh, it's been hard on you. Come in and have a cup of tea before you leave. Village Chief, has my Yingying's acceptance letter arrived? I just saw the postman coming. Sun Dongqing's voice floated in from the yard. It was full of energy, as if she was afraid that no one would know that the postman had come. The postman, who was about to say something, got on his green bicycle when he heard the voice. He waved at Zhang Difu and said with a smile, "I won't be drinking water. I still have to go to other villages to deliver the acceptance letters. You should treat the mayor's wife well." Chapter 277. The postman was from the town, so he knew a lot about the mayor's wife. Sun Dongqing wasn't the only one who came to get the notice. Everyone who had a child in their family came. The adults were more eager to get the notice than the children. Ying was wearing a floral dress. She hadn't been out in the sun for the whole summer, so her skin was much fairer than before. She wasn't as flamboyant as before. She stood beside Sun Dongqing and looked very well behaved. Everyone in the village knew about the incident on the 3rd day of school last year. Ying didn't come back during the winter break. She stayed in the provincial capital to study English. Now that a year had passed, the villagers didn't say anything. Ying had also kept a low profile, so the villagers forgot about it. Zhang Difu took out Yi Ying's notice and handed it over. "This is for your family." He then handed over the other 4 notices. Come. These are for your families. The rest, go away. 11 children and 6 notices. Naturally, those who didn't get in didn't get in. Oh, and she's from the provincial first high school. She's really from the provincial first high school. I knew it. My Ying will definitely get into the provincial first high school. Sun Dongqing looked at the school on the notice and smiled. She was not only proud, but also disdainful. She glanced at the other villagers who didn't get the notice and comforted them with a fake smile. It's okay. Studying isn't the only way out for this child. There are 360 professions. Every profession has its own master. It's good that she can work to earn money. It was easy for her to say that. If she really wanted her child to work, she wouldn't have come here to get the notice. No one argued with her. They had no choice. She was the mayor's wife. Go away, go away. We're all from the same village. Can you stop arguing? Zhang Difu looked at the smug Sun Dongqing and sighed in his heart. Jifan's wife was looking down on people more and more. Sun Dongqing looked at him with disdain and said coldly, I'm just telling the truth. You need talent to study. My Ying was born to study. How can she be compared to them? She then turned to the other 4 villagers who got the notice. Look, which school did you get into? Uncle Jen came in just in time to hear this. He walked over with a gloomy face. Difu, give me Miss Jian's notice. As soon as the old man spoke, Sun Dongqing and her mother both stiffened. Zhang Difu smiled in his heart and said respectfully, I was just about to deliver it to you. Is Miss Jian not back yet? He said he would be back in 10 days. Uncle Jen took the notice and looked at the school on it. He smiled. Ying glanced at him and greeted politely, Grandpa Jen, yes, I'll do better if I get into the provincial first high school. It didn't mean to study hard, but to learn well. The order of the words was slightly different, but the meaning was completely different. One simply meant to study hard, while the other meant to learn how to be a good person. Uncle Jen didn't like adults, but for a child, no matter how bad his character was, he wouldn't mind. Even someone as smart as Ying could tell. She lowered her eyes slightly to hide the coldness in her eyes and said obediently, You're right. It wasn't easy for me to get into a good school. I have to study hard. Otherwise, I won't be able to get into a university. My Ying is so sensible. Uncle Jen, how did the little girl do? She had originally thought that she must be amazing since she had won an international award and the first place in the cohort. But in the end, she didn't come back with any good results. Chapter 278. Sun Dongqing waved the letter in her hand and smiled like a flower blooming on her face. Our Ying's grades are still the best. She got into the provincial number 1 high school without a hitch. Mom, don't say that. Ying seemed unhappy. She took the letter from her and stuffed it back into the envelope. She said to Uncle Jen, Grandpa Jen, my mom's words are unpleasant. Actually, she's quite concerned about whether my sister got into a school or not. Uncle Jen glanced at Ying, who thought she was smart but didn't have any sense of responsibility. He said calmly, It's not bad. Number 1 high school in the city. It's as expected. Number 1 middle school isn't bad either. Although it's not as good as the provincial number 1 high school, with my sister's intelligence, it's the same no matter where she goes. Ying knew that she was relieved. She really didn't want to be in the same school as Yi Qian. There was no other reason. Yi Qian knew too much about her. If he told others in high school, she would have to live like she did in high school. She would have to live a repressed life. Hearing this, Sun Dongqing held back her pride and pretended to be concerned. She sighed and said, As long as she gets in, number 1 middle school will be number 1 middle school. She'll just suffer a little when she gets into university. This is great. I can finally answer to my sister. It wasn't strange that Sun Dongqing could shamelessly take credit for herself. Another boy from the village got into the same school as Yi Qian. When he heard that Yi Qian was in the same school as him, he was very happy. He said, That's great. We'll have a companion when we come back to the village in the future. We won't be afraid when we come back together. Of course. My poor Ying. She has to stay in school for 3 years in high school. No matter what others said, Sun Dongqing would naturally turn the topic to her own daughter and praise her a few more times. A figure stood at the entrance of the courtyard and listened quietly for a while. When he saw that the people in the courtyard were about to leave, he lowered his head and looked at the high school study materials in his hands. He turned around and left without disturbing the people in the courtyard. Ying turned around nimbly. She seemed to have seen a familiar figure flash past the entrance of the courtyard. Her eyes lit up slightly as she stopped in her tracks. She wondered if she had seen wrongly. He only stopped for a moment before he quickly chased after her. There was no one outside, only the sound of a bicycle passing by could be heard. After delivering the package, the postman asked the boy sitting behind him with a smile, "Didn't you just enter the village to look for your classmate? Didn't you find it?" "Yes, he's not at home." Gao Yiyang, who should have gone to Australia a long time ago, was already a big boy. Although his expression was cold, he still looked very educated. "Uncle, you can just drop me off in the car in front. Someone is waiting for me in the car." Hey, he already has a car at such a young age. When the postman saw the license plate of the car, he couldn't help but take a few more glances. This car must be expensive. It's long and big, and there's even a leopard on it? Tiger? It was an indiscernible symbol. Gao Yiyang, who needed to go to Australia in 3 days, came with a pile of high school study materials. When he heard from Uncle Jen that Yi Qian would be back in about 10 days, he knew he wouldn't be able to see Yi Qian this time. His eyes were filled with deep disappointment as he looked out of the car window. His indifferent expression made the driver not dare to ask more questions. Gao Yang, who left with regrets, boarded the plane to the capital. Perhaps he would settle down in Australia, or perhaps he would return to China after he finished his studies. But he knew in his heart that he would never see that girl again. She was so determined that she would give up the chance of survival to others in the face of danger. She would be like a cinnabar mole, forever fresh in his heart. Chapter 279. When Yi Qian received the notice, it was the day before Gao Yiyang left for Australia. To him, she was the cinnabar mole in his heart, but to Yi Qian, they were just classmates, not even friends. Yi Ying was the only one in the village who knew that Gao Yiyang had visited. She even called him the day before he left. Yi Ying wanted to salvage her image, but Gao Yiyang still treated her coldly. At this time, Yi Ying realized that not everyone could forgive her mistakes. Even Gao Yang, who used to like her a lot, would not let himself get to know her again just because she lowered herself and took the initiative to contact him. After hanging up the phone, Ying threw all the clothes in her wardrobe onto the floor and the bed as if she had gone crazy. She no longer screamed or roared like before. Instead, she vented her anger in silence. Yi Qian, Yi Qian. Every time she threw a piece of clothing, she hated Yi Qian. It was as if she treated the clothes as Yi Qian for her to vent her anger on. Every time she went crazy, she seemed to become gentler. In addition, Yi Zhifan did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to send her to the province to participate in all kinds of training. This made her temperament even more refined. Yi Ying, who was about to become a high school freshman, became slender and elegant. She gave off a refreshing feeling like a lotus flower. She constantly pretended to be a noble person in the south, while Yi Qian underwent dangerous and arduous training in the north. Yi Qian never knew that a person's potential was so limitless. He also did not know that after this summer vacation, her willpower had been tempered to be as strong as steel. From the south to the north, crossing more than half of the motherland, Yi Jian came to this plateau where there were herds of wild horses. Less than 10 days after coming here, Yi Jian felt so tired that she felt like she had shed a layer of skin. She was tired both physically and mentally. After climbing into the herdsman's carriage, Yi Qian collapsed on the thick grass. He was so tired that he could not even lift a finger. Principal Qin chatted happily with the herdsman. He spoke Tibetan very fluently, as if he had returned to his hometown. The moment he entered the Tibetan area, he was completely different from before. It was as if he was a native Tibetan. Yi Qian did not understand this language, which sounded like a paradise to him. He only knew that he wanted to rest, but his cerebral cortex was exceptionally excited. That was because in today's confrontation, her shooting speed was faster than Principal Chen's by about 2 seconds and she hit the target. This was the first round of dynamic training, and he was faster than Principal Chen. No matter how tired he was still excited. In July, the Tibetan area was as beautiful as a painting. During the day, the green grass, snow mountains, and blue sky were connected. At night, the sky was full of stars. Every star was shining with the brightest light, like a diamond that could be picked at any time. When the sky gradually darkened, the herdsmen began to sing. Their deep voices were powerful and high-spirited. Even if they did not understand the meaning of the simple melody, they could feel the passion for life and hear their happiness. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Yi Qian and Principal Chen disassembled their 2 sniper rifles and put them in their bags after every training session. They only carried a pistol with 12 bullets. From the south to the north, not a single bullet had been fired. "Miss Jian, we can sleep in the tent tonight." In front of them, Principal Chen, who was chatting with the herdsman until he seemed to have forgotten about Yi Qian, turned his head and said to her, "You are sleeping with Uncle Zija's daughter, Yang Jin. You are about the same age, so you can communicate." Welcome to Immortal Cultivation audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.